So this time last week, we were headed out of Phoenix, headed down to Baja for the 2022 Baja 400 with high hopes. Our plan was to come back with enough points to keep us in the chase for the championship. Hopefully, be leading the points when we came back. We were in really good shape prior to that. We went down and man, everything was ready. We did a lot of pre-running. We had everything ready to go, and the race started on Saturday morning. And got off the line. Everything was good, and unfortunately, kind of slid off the rails down the road a little ways. But you know what? The car started out strong. We were actually had great track position. I think we started 14th. Is that right? 16th. Yeah. So we started 16th, and at one point before the second pit, I know for a fact we were running physically third in our class, which is amazing, and it's a good chance that we were at that point, not that it matters, but we may have been running first on corrected time. But anyway, to get down to kind of what happened, I've had a lot of questions. Everybody's kind of calling saying, hey, what happened? And so this is the story. This is how it went down. So you had, what happened? Tell us what happened prior to the second pit. So in between pit 1 and pit 2, you had a problem. What happened?
So in between pit 1 and 2, it was actually on the crossover road, on the Mike's Road. We broke a spindle pin for the tie rod. Nothing too major, but it's definitely some downtime. We had
to have a hard hit, right? I mean, you popped a tire too, right?
No, that was afterwards.
Oh, that was after. Yeah. Okay, gotcha.
So see, this is how rumors start. Just like this.
I know.
So
I know.
So we broke a tie rod. We took a hit, but we broke a tie rod pin, and ended up at the same time breaking a front axle as well. But we didn't really know that at the time. So we kind of drove off course, got to a good spot to stop, and was able to replace the pin. We had a spare pin in the car. Not that long of a fix. We had radio communication the whole 9 yards. We informed everyone of what was going on and fixed that. Made it about, after we got up and running again, probably went another 20 miles down the road, and had to pull the front axle out. So we were actually lucky enough to be able to just kind of pull the axle out. It broke at the outer CV, so the axle was actually pulled out. So we had a stub left in the hub, and was able to pull out the axle. So you could keep running. And able to run it through wheel drive. Motored on for a little while longer.
Is that where you popped the tire?
No. And we went a little bit further down the road, and I got a flat tire.
Gotcha.
So
that's nice.
Yeah. Okay. So, patience.
So
patience.
Okay.
So we got a flat tire at that point. Hit a huge rock. It was well-deserved flat tire, and got out, changed that. So we had another 40 miles, I think, before the pit. So we had broken front tie rod, broken front axle, and a flat tire. No extra tire in the rack for another 40 miles. So we kind of babied it into the next pit, which is where you were at, 245.
Yep.
And that's when you guys.
Yep. So at 245, so in spite of having these issues, you guys were actually still in pretty good position. I think you were running 8th physical, which is good, being barely halfway through the race. So, we still felt pretty good about that. And coming into the pit, we were hoping that we would be fueling and going, and that was it. And we did have a pretty tight crew in the pit. There were only 2 of us in the pit. But as you came in, when we heard you on the radio, the wish list got a little longer. You needed an axle, and we needed to get some other parts to you in the car, and we needed to re-rack a spare, and we needed to fuel, and we needed to get peanut butter jelly sandwiches, and we needed to get waters to our driver. Anyway, so long story short, these guys were really needy at pit 2, but we took care of it. We got everything done, changed out the axle, got them the spare tire that they needed, got them fed, got the car fueled, and all in all, the pit it wasn't that long. It was a fairly short pit, even in spite of all that. So off you went, and again, you got back with the program. You were 100% at that point, and I think you picked off a couple more cars in the period of time before we saw you next. So we were able to chase up onto the highway where you guys got on the highway section headed towards Europan. And then at that point you turned off at Europan, and it was just dark, just barely dark probably.
Yeah, it was in the dark for sure.
It was dark, but not for long. And when they turn off for Europan, basically that side chase is done. We're going to the finish line, so we said adios, and we'll see you at the finish line, and headed back into town. Then what happened, Brandon?
So that's when our major catastrophic failure, our major break happened. It wasn't even so much that it was a bad break. It was a bad break. It was immobilizing for the car, but it just happened to be a very bad spot.
I think the worst. Could possibly.
So there's no access roads in that. We run BFGs, and BFG does a really good job of providing access roads and a bunch of pit information, and it's very beneficial to our race team.
Yep.
And unfortunately, in that section, there's just no access. So where we broke down was at race mile 337. I tried all 40 channels in our radio to try and reach out to anyone to get an answer, to relay a message.
Yep.
And not a single ounce of communication. No cell phone service, no nothing. Ended up breaking the front A-arm, the upper ball joint cup, basically broke that off, and it just took us out. The only way that we were going to get out of there was with a missing corner or a new A-arm,
right,
which we didn't have on the car. So my co-driver and I, Miles, we decided, don't know exactly how this happened, but we decided that we're going to try and walk and try and find some cell phone service, because like during our pre-run, we were cruising along in the pre-run, and just all of a sudden my phone would just start beeping and I'd get text messages. So it's not uncommon for you to get on top of the hill and be able to send out a message or do something.
Make a call.
So we went and we went and hiked about 2.5 miles one direction, walked about a half mile another direction, found out it was into a hillside. So yeah, Miles and I, we in the middle of the night hiked with limited water and resources, hiked about 6 miles.
Yeah.
And it was a really long night. We ended up actually sleeping out there. So we slept in the car. We pulled the car apart as far as we could, waiting on parts. We flagged down as many people as would stop out there. We flagged them down and basically told them we're at race mile 337. This is our car number. This is what's broken. Can you get a hold of Weatherman? Our guys are listening. Weatherman, can you try and relay the message? And everyone said yes. And whether or not it got lost in translation or forgot about, by the time our guys, it didn't seem to happen. But so we did get stopped by a couple guys where we were actually sleeping in the car, and a buggy pulls up and said, "Hey, Bill is on his way to you. He's 5 miles out and he's broken." So we're like, okay, how does this happen, basically? So come to find out.
So here's the backstory. So when we went back to get a trailer to go to the finish line is when we realized through the tracker, which worked really, really well, by the way, score. Kudos to you guys. The tracker worked great this whole race. We were able to see that the car was stopped. We were back at the house now. We are 30 miles, probably 40 miles from Europan, and back in Ensenada, basically, realized that the car is stopped. And so we waited for a little while, hoping that it was something minor and that they would get the car going, but it didn't take long for us to realize that no, they're still stopped. So we're gonna have to make a plan. We had phone service there. Of course, we couldn't reach the car. We tried to get Weatherman to reach the car. We tried BFG Relay to get to the car. We tried everybody to reach our car, and nobody could. So they're in this hole in the desert that has no communication. So we decided that it was probably a good idea for us to try and find a way to get to them, which meant that we'd take our pre-runner and go back to where we just came from and take a chase truck and get in as close to the course as we possibly could on an access road, which was still about 15 miles of race course to where it showed him being broke down. So at this point, we're like, well, we can't leave him in the desert overnight, which we did anyway, but we didn't mean to. So we set out. We got the pre-runner off the trailer. I loaded a bunch of parts, not knowing what was broke on the race car. I grabbed just a big smorgasbord of parts, threw them in the car, and took off in the pre-runner to try and find them. So I got about 8 miles in on course, which, by the way, is brutal in there. I don't know how these guys race it. My hat's off to all these guys that can race these cars through what I was driving this pre-runner through. I don't get to get out on the course very often, and I'll tell you what, when these guys come in and they say they're tired and they say they're sore, now I know why, because it was brutal. So anyway, I'm driving out there in the pre-runner, hoping to be able to fix the car and hoping to get a finish out of this deal. Still still hopeful, still optimistic. Got about 8 miles in, and suddenly the right front of the car dropped, and something was wrong desperately. Bad noise, big bang. Got out, and I had broken an upper control arm. So, not knowing what was broke on the other car, it's like, well, now I'm stranded. I cannot reach the race car. I don't know if I can reach anybody. So, fortunately, where I was a little bit higher elevation, and I actually had phone service. Barely had phone service, but I had phone service. I was able to get in touch with our other chase truck, our second chase truck, which was over near Ojos Negros. So, in reaching them, I said, hey, I need another car. I need another UTV. Can't bring the truck in here. We cannot get the trucks into this point. Still looking to fix the race car, but I'm broke now. I need an upper control arm. So chase truck, you guys need to go back into Ensenada, and you need to find another UTV. You need to get to the access road where we came in, and you need to come out and bring me parts so we can fix the pre-runner and go get our drivers. So they acknowledged that, okay, we know what to do, but who are we going to get a UTV from? So I made a couple more phone calls with my limited phone service, and I got a hold of our friend Wayne Matlock, who was gracious enough to allow us to use his pre-runner, which was back in Ensenada at Estero Beach. But nonetheless, it was the closest thing that we could get our hands on. And thank you, Wayne. We appreciate it. Believe me, you saved our bacon there. So we may still be out there living in Mexico now. So anyway, Chase, our other chase truck went all the way to Estero Beach, picked up the pre-runner, drove out to Europan with the chase truck and then our new pre-runner, and found our other chase truck, got the parts that I needed because I was able to communicate that to them, and came out. One guy stayed with the truck, the other guy took the pre-runner, came in, finally found me. This has been hours. Now we're hours out. It was very dark. It was getting pretty cold. It was colder where you were in the valley. But nonetheless, he brought the parts. We were able to fix the car. Now the pre-runner, both pre-runners now are good to go. Now we still got to go find our race car. All right, so we had about another 7 miles of this terrible, terrible race course road to drive before we actually found our race car. We found the race car. They were huddled up in the car trying to stay warm, and we realized at that point that he actually broke the exact same part that we had broken on the pre-runner and just replaced. Fortunately, the other spare part that we had was in our other chase truck, which now was 15 miles back to where we started to be able to get it. So unfortunately, one of the pre-runners had to go back 15 miles through the roughest desert in the world to get another A-arm, to come back out to the race car to be able to put it together. I was the guy who got to do that, and so I got a good education of how rough that is. 3-4 times I got to do that. Yeah, and we got the other part. Now we've been up all night, and of course these guys finally got a fire.
Yeah.
Got a fire going, got warm. I brought them back some food, and we put the car back together, and then we limped back to our chase trucks with our tail between our legs, and realized that Baja had finally dealt us our first DNF in 10 years of racing. So 10 years of score racing, never missed a race and never DNF'd a race, and the 400 was the one that caught up to us, and it bit us, and unfortunately we got dealt our first DNF in Mexico. And you know what? We hold our head high because that's a lot of racing, that's a lot of miles, and you know, we've never not gotten the milestone award in racing in Baja since 2013.
Yep.
And so we're sad to see that. We're sad to see that little blip in our radar now. So unfortunately, but you know what? We're gonna hold our heads high. We're gonna prep for the 1,000.
Yep.
And we're gonna go out and see if we can get a class win there. So we still got a car that'll do it, and a team that'll do it, and we're gonna be ready to go. So
Definitely gonna do our homework and get ready for the 1,000.
Yep, we'll see everybody back in Baja, and thanks for following along. And now I hope that answers all the questions as to what happened to the Jagged X team. Now you know. That's the rest of the story.